computer. There's people that I haven't met in person on this call, and my name is Brielle Kennington, in case you don't know me. I've met a lot of people on Facebook just through sharing about my ADHD and my fitness journey. I've lost 72 pounds since 2015, just eating healthy, but mostly getting a hold of my mental health. I wasn't able to be on my ADHD medication when I was pregnant and nursing, and it was really hard. I was depressed and I gained a lot of weight, and we kept moving around the United States for jobs and internships and whatnot. And so the more I've started talking about it and sharing it, the more I started just connecting with other moms about their children with ADHD. And I found that I was having the same conversation with them over and over again, and kind of helping them troubleshoot issues that they're having, that their kids are struggling with. And I just felt prompted and inspired to create some sort of support for parents, because I feel like there really isn't anything available. Even after I was diagnosed when I was 17, like that was kind of like, we worked with my psychologist, and then that was kind of the end of it. People didn't talk about it. I had even been told on several occasions that ADHD isn't real, that it's a scam, it's overdiagnosed. And when you're 17, that really messes with your head. So I just thought, well, the only thing we can do is just start talking about it more. So just my backstory a little bit. So I always struggled in school growing up, but I was an obedient, nice child. Pretty much every report card said I was a pleasure to have in class, and I was bubbly. And so not the typical ADHD kid that you'd think of. I wasn't ever standing on my chair or being disruptive. But I did have teachers snap their fingers in front of my face. I had teachers get really upset when I asked the same exact question that was asked a few seconds before. Just like literally like kind of felt like Finding Dory. And I just kept struggling in school. I couldn't read till the 2nd grade, and tried really hard, spent a ton of time on homework. And I also would just have these meltdowns where it almost seemed very immature. Like I'd be having a meltdown over the colored plate I got, but it wasn't about the plate. I would lash out at my siblings because I would just get so frustrated. And it seemed like I was really disobedient, but really I did go into the laundry room to rotate the laundry, but I legitimately forgot what I was doing on the way in and came out without doing it. So I felt like I was constantly in trouble, and just struggled in school, spent hours and hours and hours on homework. But it's kind of like a blessing at the same time, because I feel like my parents didn't make excuses for me, and I learned to just work hard, and I learned how I needed to learn, and that I learned differently than other people. It wasn't until high school, probably middle school into high school, when I just spiraled down. I struggled with binge eating, where I'd eat like an entire box of tasty cakes in a matter of minutes, like the whole box. And I started doing that at a really young age, and it was mostly because of just the ADHD. I was just so overwhelmed all the time by everything going on. And so my parents thought I was depressed, and so they took me to a doctor, and right away he was just like, this is not depression. This is something else. The depression is just a symptom. And I'm so glad that they found that out right away, because a lot of girls with ADHD, they think it's something else. They get misdiagnosed, or they just don't get diagnosed, because it isn't always necessarily the typical like out of control or hyper child that you think of. But once I got the help that I needed, I was put on Strattera, which was a huge blessing for me because it worked right away. Usually you have to kind of play with medications and dosages and try different things. But I was lucky that it worked for me right away. And my grades were like, it was just, I felt like a new person. I felt like this is what I'm supposed to feel like. Like it was just, I just wasn't, I felt like there was like pressure on my shoulders all the time. And I was like overwhelmed and just like just overstimulated all the time. And so then when I was on medication, it just felt like just things were easier. I was able to lose weight that I had put on from my binge eating disorder, and my grades went up. I got into college because at that point I kind of was thinking that I wasn't going to make it in college. So it literally completely changed my life, and I think that it saved my life. So I think probably one of the great debates and worry with parents is to medicate or not to medicate, and that's one of the topics I wanted to bring up, because parents are almost afraid to talk about it, because if you say you're medicating your kid, it's like saying there's something wrong with them or that you are taking the easy way out. I've heard so many terrible things from parents who medicate their children, but if I hadn't been medicated, I probably would have committed suicide, because I had it all planned out, because that's how depressed I was. And sometimes I think about how my childhood would have been if I had been medicated earlier, because it would have probably started where I could have been medicated and it would have helped me, like 2nd or 3rd grade. It would have made a huge difference in the classroom setting, and also my relationship with my family, because like just the overwhelming feelings I had all the time, I would lash out. A lot of times things not having to do with what was going on, but that was just how I dealt with it. So it would have totally changed everything. Okay, let me see. Okay, there was just a little bit of an echo. So as far as medication goes, I think the only thing parents can do is talk to the doctor, look at your kid individually, and give it a try. Some parents feel guilty about medicating their children, but really, if your kid was diabetic, would you not give them insulin? Like, sure, you can probably help with diet. Yeah, you can help with diet, but that's not going to cure the diabetes. And it's the same with even taking medication for ADHD. I still have ADHD. Like, Strattera is not a magical pill. Like, I don't just take it and it's like, bam, like I'm normal. No, like my brain is still different than other people's. I still have to do different behavioral things to help me compensate and to function in society. Because people don't realize kind of like what you do when you have ADHD, and it's different for everybody. For example, controlling impulsiveness. I could respond and have something to say at every minute of the day. And anyone who knows me knows that I am quite chatty. It's because there's no filter. It's like straight from here, like out. So, and Camille's laughing because she knows it's true. Like it's kind of good that so to compensate for that, I'm kind, I'm nice. My parents taught me to be nice, because otherwise I kind of was saying mean, stupid things when I was a little kid, just not realizing it and not processing it and thinking before I would speak. And so to kind of compensate for that, I feel like they just really worked on kindness to where I don't think mean things, and so I don't say them. Also, when I am in a group setting, like a book club or a discussion or a relief society activity at church, whenever they're like asking for participation, if I raise my hand and make a comment, I then count how many people between when I spoke. So I kind of give myself rules so that I'm not super obnoxious. Those are the things that kind of my parents helped me to learn. Like, well, when usually, they'd explain that when you're in a group, usually you have to make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk, because some people don't think as quick. They don't have a response so quick. They have to think about it first, and then they need some time to say it. And so to have someone like literally tell me that this is what normal people do, it really helped me. And now I have kind of those tricks that I use to just make sure that I'm being socially acceptable. Does that make sense? It probably sounds so silly, but like these are legitimate things that I do and that I use on a daily basis. So my son, Austin, I've always kind of suspected, he hasn't been diagnosed yet, but I just see so much of myself in him. That compulsiveness, he feels the need that he has to do something, that he like has to do it. He has to see what happens. And so we've been letting him, but then we talk about it a lot afterwards. We talk about consequences a lot, and he's starting to be able to process that and think through that. We have what's called talk time in the evening before bed, and we talk about his day, just things that happen, good things, bad things. Sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes, but that sometimes you have to verbalize and teach and give words to things that you wouldn't think you'd have to talk to them about. Like the rule about people talking or not saying something just because you think it. Like sometimes you have to actually verbalize it, because otherwise he wouldn't realize that. You have to teach them to be normal human beings. Also, if you have an ADHD kid, they might be obsessive about certain things, like hyper-focused tunnel vision on things. And it's like almost like obsessiveness. Like it's like not just a passion or hobby, it's like they're obsessed. And their whole world is that thing. For me, it was music, and it was, I excelled at it because that was my thing in high school. And now my thing is Beachbody, so I'm excelling at it. So those are the types of things that if they have an obsession, don't like get freaked out that they have this obsession. Nurture it, but also you have to tell them what they're good at besides that thing, because a lot of times I've noticed that it's kind of an all or nothing mentality where you think, well, I'm not good at English, I'm not good at math, I'm good at singing, I'm not good at school, I'm just good at singing. But you have to verbalize and give them lots of words of affirmations of things they're good at besides that thing they're obsessed with, but still let them have that in their life, and nurture it. If they're obsessed with like science stuff, like roll with it because that's probably what they're going to major in, and they're going to be awesome at it. So there are some pros. It's not like this curse. If your child has ADHD, there are struggles with it, but it can also be something that helps them be a successful adult. As far as, I had a lot of parents, I've been talking to them about what they wanted to hear about, and a lot of them said they wanted to talk about like staying on task. And so Aubrey and I kind of talked about this a little bit before we other people hopped on, but as far as staying on task, that is really hard in a classroom setting. For me, once I found out, well, before I even found out, when I was taking notes or when I was listening in class, I always had a notebook with me that I could be drawing. And I wasn't like a good drawer or anything, but just coloring or filling in or doing something with my hands, because if I had my hands occupied, then I could focus. And it's the same thing even for me now. If I have like something in my hand, that sucker is shredded. If I'm trying to listen to something, I will spin my rings, I will crack my fingers, I play with my hair, I flick my ear. Like if my hands are busy, it helps me tune everything else out and focus on what I'm trying to focus on. So if your kid is fidgety, it's probably them trying to compensate and trying to filter everything else out and focus on it. So even now I'll listen to Audible when I'm listening to my personal development, or I listen to my scriptures, because I can read a paragraph 5 times and not really understand what it's saying because the comprehension's not there, because I get distracted. But if I listen to it and my hands are busy, I've got like a steel trap. Like once it's there, it's there. So if you can figure out a way for them to be able to like stay on task, like don't make them sit still. Have them stand when they do their homework. Have them, there's like tons of stuff you can get. You can get rubber bands for them to play with. They have fiddle rings where it's a ring that stays on, but the inside part spins. They have little cubes you can hold, and there's different ways you can click it and make little things. They don't have to sit still. Like let them, whatever they need to stay on task, that helps. I think the hardest thing for stay on task is if it's something they don't want to do, they're gonna like fight you tooth and nail. So what my parents did is they had like a reward system, but it was something I really cared about, because if they don't care about it, they're just going to be like, whatever. So having them have something in sight where they can like really focus on that. If they're like really into Minecraft, offer them something Minecraft. If they get like a certain amount of stickers for doing their homework or something like that. That was my, you just have to find what their not what their currency is. That's the word I was thinking of, what their currency is. As far as listening to you, disobedience, that's something a lot of parents were talking to me about. I think sometimes it's the memory issue, not the not listening. And it's also the impulsiveness that makes you feel like they're not listening because you say, don't you dare, and they do it anyway. And so if you can think of it that way, sometimes that makes it easier to understand.
I gave her medicine, but it'll probably be a few minutes before she calms down.
Okay, are you going to stay up here in case she throws up?
You just messing with me, but there's not much I can do.
Okay.
But she didn't eat.
Sorry.
So she's not gonna
Junie's freaking out. And we don't know if, like, she kind of barfs all the time, so I don't know if she's sick or if she just is crying. So I was talking to Jeff about it. Staying on task. That's what I was talking about, right? So if they're struggling with staying on task, let them fiddle with stuff. Keep their hands busy. And then reward them with something that they are really passionate about. And then I think I actually did move on to listening. I think, like, as far as listening, chores and morning routines and bedtime routines are what I've heard parents just like feel like they want to rip their hair out. And I kind of feel like I want to rip my hair out, and I don't even know if my kids have ADHD. So I know that it was something I struggled with as a kid. When you have a bunch of things that you need to do, sometimes you get so overwhelmed that you just don't even know where to start. At least that was me. So even now as an adult, I am a list person. And children with ADHD, they don't necessarily need a list. They might need pictures. For a morning routine, for example, have a picture of a toothbrush, have a picture of cereal or toast or whatever they eat in the morning, have a picture of their clothes, have a picture of their backpack. And you can even print them off and cut them into like flashcards and laminate them. And then when it's time to do that thing, you just give them one flashcard with a picture of clothes on it. And then once they finish that task, they hand it back to you. Because having that physically to hold is a reminder of what they're supposed to be doing. You might have to make a few sets of those because they might lose them. But that for me as a kid would have been like really, really helpful, just to have that visual, because I learn best and I remember best when I use all my senses. Touch, saying things, hearing things, seeing things. That's how I like memorize things or learn things. So that would, that might work for you. It might not work for you. But I know that totally would have worked for me. And it also feels more fun instead of just saying, go put your shoes on, go put your shoes on, put your shoes on, put your shoes on. And then you end up screaming at them because they don't put their shoes on. Just hand them the card and then they give it back and then you can give them a new one. And also just letting them know when they're doing a good job, because I felt like a bad kid my whole life because I struggled with this, and it just was really hard on my self-esteem. So to just be told out loud by my parents things they're proud of and things that I'm good at, especially things that I didn't think I'm good at, is huge for a kid that is struggling with this, because you feel like you're not doing a good job. And you put a lot of your self-worth into productivity, how much you do. And so that's why having all those cards to hand back, I did this, I did this, I did this, it makes you feel good. It's like crossing stuff off your to-do list. And sometimes you even add stuff at the bottom that wasn't on your list so that you can cross it off. Or maybe I'm the only one who does that. And I kind of talked a little bit about sitting still with staying on task. If they can't sit still, don't make them sit still. For me, sitting like I could sit in my chair and I could sit through church. I was fine, but I was fidgety, and it probably drove my mom crazy. I was always twirling my hair, playing with my ears. I sucked my fingers till I was like 12 because it helped me block everything else out. Even now as an adult and being medicated, I turn everything off sound-wise. I open all my windows first thing, but then like there's no radio on, there's no TV on in the background. Even like a fan or a heater drives me crazy. I tried to dehydrate some apples the one day, and I just about lost my mind because it kept pulling me out of task every like 5 seconds, it felt like. So if you can eliminate distractions and like let them move around, that can help them a ton in the classroom setting. And also, teachers matter. So if you can find a good teacher that they're willing to like work with you, not necessarily give them outs and not do work, because you don't want them to think that they can't do everything that the other kids are doing. But just, for example, Austin, he does not want to show his work for math. And so his teacher said, okay, just show it for the first 2, and then you can do the rest in your head. Like, that's okay. You know what I mean? So I think that like working with the teacher, talking, like really good communication between you and the teacher is just huge. And you have to be an advocate for your kid. Teachers have a hard job, but you still have to be an advocate for your kid. So don't be mean, but you can still voice your opinion and push until it gets resolved. And then there's also teachers that they really thrive with children that have ADHD or ADD, because if you understand it, then you can use it to just like flame their passions and get them excited. Anything that Austin or I are excited about, like we're like full throttle. Like I said before about that tunnel vision. So if you can just foster that in the classroom setting, then it'll make their learning experience so much better. I know some of you hopped on late, but I wanted to open it up to more of like a discussion between moms or parents that are on here. If you have like a specific situation with your child, or things that have worked well for you, or things that you need help with, don't be shy. Let me see what the chat says. This is also familiar. Oh, good. I'm not like just like rambling. So Aubrey said this is also familiar. What if they're obsessed with Minecraft? Austin's obsessed with Minecraft. We use it as a reward. Like, so for his Minecraft, he has to have his chores done, he has to have his homework done, and he has to be, usually we wait till he's even in his pajamas, so it doesn't take like an hour for him to get in his pajamas, and then he can have Minecraft time. Also, we limit the technology time that he has, otherwise he becomes aggressive and mean. And I'm not sure if that's a kid thing or an ADHD thing, because he's my first. And I didn't grow up with technology, so I'm not sure how that applies with ADHD. Oh, good. So I'm getting comments like, great idea, love this, worked for my older boys too. You guys can unmute yourselves and ask questions or type it in the box. Anything you want to specifically hear about. I've had a lot of conversations with just people one-on-one to kind of get a feel for what people wanted to hear.
Yeah, this is really helpful. Thank you. I so much of what you were saying, I was just like, yes, like Soren is you. Yes, not a mean kid, not a bad kid, not making trouble. Like hearing you say it really just helps me understand more that like he really, like you said, maybe is not remembering or is not I don't know, getting it, not trying to disobey me. But yeah, just really, like you said, like going into the laundry room and then you come out and you haven't done it. he
Right.
does stuff like that all the time.
Well,
And I'm like,
I was like mortified about it because like especially as I got to be a teenager, it
yeah,
sounds ridiculous. And even as an adult, and I am on medication, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's my reality. Even, and it's kind of, crazy to walk into the bathroom, walk out and be like, oh, I didn't use the bathroom. Like, but it still happens. And, especially when I wasn't on my medication, I would ask my husband like 5 or 10 times after he got home from work, how was work? And he was a good sport. He would answer me. And it's not that I don't care about the answer. It's that I just forgot that I asked and I didn't remember what he said.
yeah.
And that's, so it's not that I wasn't listening and it's not that I don't care. So he's been really good about it. And he was really good where I was finally done nursing and I was able to get back on my medication. And I think this is when it clicked for him that this was a real thing. I was in the kitchen getting ready for church and I was making breakfast or something. And I like looked over because he was like staring at me and I was like, what? And he said, welcome back.
Oh.
Because it's like, it doesn't change who you are. It makes you who you are. I felt like when I was on my medication, it made me myself, not different from myself. Does that make sense? And so I don't want parents to be afraid that they're going to lose their child if they medicate them, because if anything, that's who your child really is. If you can get like the right combination or the right dosage and the right doctor to work with, it can completely change your lives and change everything for you.
Have you noticed any side effects from your medication?
Yes, if I don't take it with food, I get really sick and like I'll shake and sweat, almost like you would if you have low blood sugar. Also, sometimes it makes it harder for me to sleep at night, but I always struggle to sleep at night, so it's not that much of a difference for me. I think that that's actually an ADHD thing. So I think a lot of kids with ADHD aren't sleeping well. That affects your entire life, because until I started wearing my Fitbit to bed that I realized that I was like moving and getting up and waking up sometimes 28 times at night. And so I felt like I wasn't sleeping, and that's been my whole life. And I also remember all my dreams, and I dream every night. So I feel like my mind never shuts off, and I feel like I'm awake. And so I think that this is just personal opinion. I think that a lot of ADHD kids struggle with that. And so like I was a bear in the morning. Like my parents like would always like kind of joke around, like, but I was just like, because I wasn't sleeping. So let me read some of these comments. Aaron, as far as the fidget things go, there's so many out there. You can put a rubber band on his chair. You can give him a bracelet to wear. You can, like the clicker things, that clicker thing would have drove me nuts. Like there was somebody who was tapping their pencil when I was trying to take my SAT, and I blame them for my low test score. But like you can find things that like aren't a distraction. Rings to spin, a necklace to play with. Some kids like chew holes in their shirts. There's other things that you can do that aren't necessarily like, because I've seen those too, like where it's a clicker or something you spin. It just needs to be something quiet. So it needs to be something where they're moving, but it's not going to create a sound, because that clicking draws your attention to what you're holding then, if that makes sense. Yes. So Alice, thank you. She said, my son is a million times better with his medication. Is that what it's called? ATIOM? Is that the medication? ATIOM? I've never heard of that one. I take Strattera. It's a non-stimulant, and I just had success with it. And if it ain't good.
No, sorry, my baby typed that. That's not the medicine. I just put medication, then it like typed, and then it sent. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
No, he takes Vyvanse. And he also takes, we tried so many different medications. Like it really takes a while to find the perfect fit. But he had really bad aggression, and he put like holes in his door. He broke his window. Like he just had really bad aggression. And so he also takes one for that. I'm trying to think of the name of it. But yeah, no, he's a completely different person. Plus he's 11, so I feel like he has also kind of grown up a little bit and gotten more used to probably with his disability. So
Right. Yeah, because I wasn't diagnosed till later on too. But I would have outbursts too. I burned my brother with one of those like steam cleaner things. Like bad, like secondary burn on his hand. I felt terrible about it. And it almost felt like you literally cannot control it. And like it just like happened. And I was old enough that I was just like, I can't believe I just did that. But that was the reality of that. I literally like, there was no thinking about it. There was no premeditation. It was just like, it happened because he was pushing my buttons on purpose. Like he was being a big jerk, but it still was just, I would have stuff like that happen. And I was like afraid of,
yeah.
I didn't understand what was happening or why it happened. And so like trying to help that impulsiveness and then just also each kid's going to process things differently. So if you get upset and there's a lot of emotion, they need to learn how to express that, whether it's drawing or for me, it was music. Music helped me tremendously. Some kids, it could be like just a timeout thing or something where they like those like decompressed balls where you have glitter in a bottle and you shake it and you just let it. So if you can catch it early enough when you see them getting worked up, because otherwise it's just there's going to be an explosion when there is a release. I had a lot of really bad interactions with my siblings. Like I felt like kind of like a black sheep. I was one of 6. I was the 4th of 6. So like middle child on top of having ADHD. And like they would just like push and push and push because I would have these like crazy person moments and they kind of liked it because it was entertaining. And then I would be the one to get in trouble for it. I'm not like trying to diss my parents. They did an amazing job at raising me, but they just didn't understand what was happening or why. And so if you can get your whole family on board and teach your other kids, you don't want to walk on eggshells with them because that's not fair either. But if you can work together and come to solutions and understandings, there's certain things that they would do that would bother me that they didn't even know was bothering me. Just like when I was trying to fall asleep, my little sister shared, we had a bunk bed, but it was a bigger bed underneath the top bunk. So all 3 of us on the bunk bed. And they would like rest their feet like underneath the bars because my dad had made it so that it was like, I don't know how it like stuck together, but anyway, they could like fit their feet through and they could like push up on my mattress. Well, someone who struggles with sleep every night and has like anxiety when she goes to bed because she knows she's not going to sleep, that is like huge. You know what I mean? So like something small that they were doing where they weren't even trying to necessarily annoy me. They were just resting their feet there, but I could feel it because I can feel everything and I can hear everything and I can see everything and I can smell everything. And it just like builds and builds and builds until it has to come out eventually. And sometimes it wouldn't even be in that moment. So I'd have a breakdown a few days later or the next day about something stupid, but it really came down to all the other things that happened along the way that I couldn't control that made it just hard for me to function. And as a kid, you can't verbalize that. You can't put that into words. That I didn't know what the word overwhelmed was. I didn't know what the word frustrated was. I didn't know like overload. Because a lot of it was just like sensory overload. Even now, my Austin, he cannot be in the same room as my vacuum. He can't be in the same room as my blender. And even me, when I'm done vacuuming now, like that noise, like that constant noise, just like I don't realize it till after I'm done. And that's why I totally don't vacuum as much as I should. But like, it's like a sigh of relief when it's over. Like, and it's like stuff like that you don't even notice that you can help them in, like, they should feel safe at home and it should be somewhere where they thrive. And so if you can make the conditions as best situated as you can for them. There's probably things that are bothering them that you had no idea. Fans and squeaky doors and just things people are saying that are hurting their feelings, but they just don't know how to verbalize it. So if you can, when they have an outburst, if you can try to troubleshoot it with them, talk about feelings, talk about what happened beforehand, keep going back, because if you really start talking to them about it and it's open and there's no punishment, it's more of just like trying to help them work through it and being concerned about their feelings. Sometimes it helps them come to the realization that it's not about the color of the cup I got. It's about all this other stuff that led up to it. But for a little kid, that's hard to verbalize. So teaching them those words and trying to like work through scenarios and just talking, a lot of talking. I know some kids, I have a friend whose son just like will not talk about it. That's hard. You just have to come up with ways that they do like to express it, whether it's drawing a picture. Austin, especially when he was little, he was punching holes in the wall. He was ripping the drywall off. He was just like kind of like out of control type of thing. We started doing that talk time where we describe things, and sometimes he was just like, I just don't know the words, and he would say that, and so I would hand him a piece of paper and a pencil or some crayons, and he would draw it. And that was just like completely eye-opening. And I never would have thought about that. But the one time we were at church and he had a huge meltdown, and he got a hold of a chalk and found a chalkboard and he drew it. He was in a room in the dark alone, and he just drew what had happened that had triggered it. And that's when we were like, oh, maybe this is something that we can use. I think that was a direct answer to my prayers, because I had been struggling with him so much. So, I am religious. I do believe that this, anything that weighs on your heart as a mother, Heavenly Father cares about. And so you're allowed to pray for guidance for that. And I feel like a lot of the things I've learned about myself and learned to help me has been from divine intervention and Heavenly Father helping to guide me to come to these conclusions. And just like even tonight, knowing who might need this or who to invite and who to talk to. So our son often asks social questions about things that seem basic. For example, if my husband and I disagree about something and he hears a conversation, he will ask, are you mad at mom? Or if my husband goes for a bike ride with his brother, my son will ask, do you like him? Are you friends? Is that something common for ADHD, especially boys? Yes, we actually talked about that a little bit, where social setting, group settings, my mom would have to like verbally tell me, you don't do X, Y, Z. You like just things that you would think are common knowledge. She would have to like specifically tell me not to do, or that you do this. And the way she went about it, I really liked. She just chalked it up to politeness. Well, when we're polite, we do X, Y, Z. It's really polite to let everybody have a turn to say what they want to say, that type of thing. Or a lot of times my only feeling, because I didn't know what the other feelings were, was I went straight to anger. And so I thought everybody else was mad when they aren't mad at me. I thought everybody was mad at me. I thought everybody was disappointed in me, because that's what I was feeling all the time, because I didn't know what else there was to feel, and I didn't know how to express it. So like verbalizing those things. And that's why I also ask Austin all the time, because he's the one that he hasn't been officially diagnosed, because he hasn't been struggling in school. We've been willing to work, able to work with his teachers and stuff, but with just my personal experience, I'm, keeping my eye on him. And so for him, when we have our talk time at the end of the day, I'll say, do you have any questions about something that happened today? Like you were kind of confused about something, or something made you mad, and then we'll talk about it. And he'll say, I was mad at myself for X, Y, Z. And I'll say, oh, do you know there's a word for that? It's called guilt. You felt guilty. So instead of him getting mad at his brother for what Austin did to him, that sounds did you catch that? So like Austin and Bennett were fighting. Austin lashed out at Bennett for something Austin did because he felt guilty for what he did to his brother. That sounds kind of ridiculous, but he didn't know what else to feel, but he felt guilty and he felt bad. And so that was the lash out. So there's been just so many revelations with that talk time. And also I've even learned as an adult when I'm starting to feel anxiety or that overwhelming feeling or that feeling of, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to. Like when I start hearing that in my mind, it's kind of like a light bulb goes off and I'm like, okay. And I work through it. I troubleshoot it. What if XYZ happens? What will be the consequences? What will be the outcome if that fear happens? And so I can walk myself through things. And that's been a huge help. But kids usually can't do that themselves. And so if you do that with them, then that can be a huge help for them to understanding their emotions. So his medicine that helps his mood swings and outbursts is Abilify. Thank you for sharing that. Abilify. It was hard. We went through a really rough time before we found his perfect medication mix that happens. He does clonidine, Clonidine. I probably said it right or wrong. And melatonin. I use that, and that helps him sleep as well. I felt bad giving my child medication at first, but seeing his success in school and socially and his home makes it all worth it. My son does the same thing, always putting himself down. Yeah. Oh my gosh. We're like best buddies. I feel so connected to him right now. Yes. Like in the beginning, I shared that I got on 80 milligrams of Strattera my very first try. That was a miracle. That never happens. But it needed to happen because I was at the end of my rope and I didn't realize what was going on. And I think that it was just kind of a miracle and we were really blessed and that I was just really fortunate because it is trial and error. And sometimes you need combinations and it's so confusing. And also there's just stuff out there saying that it's not real. And it's just anything with mental health is confusing and it's hard. And you just have to go with your mommy instincts. You know your children best. And when they start to have success, they're going to have so much happiness and you'll feel like you have a new child, but you'll feel like you have your child. And I'm not saying everybody needs to medicate because it's such a personal decision. I wouldn't look down on a mom if she medicated, and I wouldn't look down on a mom if she didn't medicate. Just because I would make a different decision for my child doesn't mean that you're making the wrong decision for your child. Because I know that there's, diet, there's exercise, there's behavioral therapy you can do. But I also know that sometimes that can only go so far because I feel like I do the diet, exercise, behavioral therapy, and I do the medication. And that's when I thrive. Not just like get through the day, not just survive, but I thrive. Like I feel like I'm thriving. So it's just such a personal decision. And you don't necessarily have to do it right away. And sometimes you can even take breaks from it or try different things. But I've known a lot of people that have a lot of success once they do find a good medication fit for them. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Oh, thanks, Aubrey. Yeah, it is real. People who say it's not real, they just don't understand it. And I used to get upset and I used to get mad, all feisty about it because I thought of the damage it did to me. Because there was multiple times in high school and in college that I stopped taking my medication based off of comments from other people. So it used to make me mad because I'm like, they don't realize the damage that they're doing. But now I'm just like, I don't know if it's maturity. I'm 30 now, but it's just, they don't know what they're doing and they don't understand it. And when you struggle with it every day, it's real. When you see someone you love struggle with it every day, it's real. And that's all that matters. ADHD, yes, it might be overdiagnosed. Yes, it could be made up. But what I do know is I'm different from other people, and I feel really good when I'm on medication and when I exercise and eat healthy. So whether it's ADHD or not, this is something that's always going to be part of my life. And I've come to terms with the fact that I'm always going to be on medication for this. And I used to be embarrassed by it. Like, hardly anybody knew I had ADHD. But when I finally started sharing with people, it touched a lot of people's lives and helped other people not have to go through a lot of the struggles that I had to go through with it. So that's why I'm just willing to talk about it now, because it helps people. That was me. So the comment says, I was diagnosed with ADHD at 18. I was 17 and got put on Strattera. That's what I was put on. And it really helped me as well. I haven't taken it since I was pregnant with my oldest son. So I only took it for about a year. So for me, I would go on and off of it when I was pregnant. I had to be off of it when I was pregnant and breastfeeding. And that was just so hard because it took me a year to get pregnant with Junie. And then I was pregnant with her and then I nursed her. So it was like, for 3 years, I didn't even feel like myself, and I feel like I was like a terrible mother, and I was failing at everything, and it hurt my relationship with my husband. I mean, we were okay, but it was hard. And so I feel like if you have a child with ADHD, look at your spouse and look at yourself and look at your extended family, because it's hereditary. So you might be struggling with it too, and you just didn't realize it, because it comes from somewhere. When I was diagnosed, I actually had family members say, there's no such thing as ADHD. I think you're misdiagnosed. That family member has now been diagnosed with ADHD. And so 3 out of my parents' 6 children have now been diagnosed with ADHD, but it wasn't until high school and adulthood that they were diagnosed. And now our children now we're starting to see it in them too. But we're just more aware of it now. So here was a really good question. If I miss anyone's questions, just like retype it or like wave at me or something. So Camille said, okay, any tips for how to help a child get past something they're upset about and fixated on? For example, my son often gets annoyed by preschool age kids who act like they know it all and he thinks they don't. Austin gets upset by that too. Yes, so that's where like the kindness thing comes in, where you have to like praise the heck out of them when they show compassion and like talk about like how good they are with little kids and how even if it's not true, like I loved how you let him express his feelings and you didn't get upset that he wasn't right, because they get fixated on right and wrong. It's very black and white, tunnel vision. And they can't get past that. And so they almost think that person's trying to trick them or trying to hurt them or confuse them. And they take it personally when all preschool kids act like they know everything. They can't wait to tell you all the things that they know. And so I think that just like continuing to talk about it, even if it's the same conversation until they understand. And then if it's, like they're upset, like throwing a fit, we just remove from the situation. And then once they're calm, we talk about it. And sometimes we wait to talk about it, but we always talk about it after they're calm. And that's our biggest thing, is that they need to calm down. We remove them from the situation, and so that we can talk about it. And sometimes you can even do the picture thing where they draw a picture. Well, when they do that, how does it make you feel? Do you think they're trying to make you feel that way? Like that type of thing, because they might not even realize that they're not trying to hurt their feelings or make them feel stupid, but they take everything personally. Like when my mom would tell Janae, my younger sister, like I'm trying to think of an example. I guess it doesn't matter if it like really happened, but she'll say like, Janae, you were so good at helping with chores. Well, that means I'm not good at helping with chores. As like insane as that might sound, like low self-esteem, they need lots of words of affirmation. And for me, it was like I always talk about how like, I was like, my mom's so critical. Well, she is a little critical, but a lot of it could be that I'm very sensitive to the things she says. Like if this was before a lot of personal development, before my health journey, and before getting back on medication, I felt like I was going through life apologizing for everything. If I was out in public and someone was like, "Oh, do you have a pencil?" Like to like my kid or something, I'd take it. "Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have given that to them." No, the kid's fine. He's not going to stab himself in the eye with a pencil. But I was so hypersensitive to everything because a lot of times they are like, they have a lot of compassion and they're very sensitive. It's like a weird mix where they might not be able to verbalize or understand the emotions of other people, but they have a lot of emotion. So then in adulthood, they actually are very compassionate, where I internalize a lot of it. When I was in the relief society presidency, like that was hard. I felt like I was just like sucking in everyone's like negative energy and like struggles. But it's because I feel things so intensely, and like the senses are just, it almost feels like I have like spidey sense or something with emotions. So everything, like if you like break someone's crayon, it's a broken crayon. But for me, that would be, they're trying to hurt me, you know, like to where it almost seems irrational, especially if it was an accidental crayon break. Does that make sense? So like just like getting them to understand the motives behind what the other kids are doing, or asking them how it makes them feel, and maybe even putting your own words into their mind. For example, if they couldn't say, "It makes me feel inferior," you could say, like, "Does it make you feel like you don't know as much as them?" Like that type of thing. So like asking them questions to try to like see, but it's like, it's finding the root of it, which is so hard, but it becomes easier. We started doing this with Austin when he was about 3, and he's 8 now. And he'll start to like really struggle, and Jeff and I will realize that we haven't been doing it because he needs that to work things out socially, to work things out with his emotions, to understand, because they have the same emotions as adults. They just don't understand what they are, or what they mean, or how they should deal with them. And you can even have them come up with their own solutions. If I do this, like if you yell at your brother, what do you think the consequence should be? If you hit your brother or you destroy property, what do you think the consequence should be? And so if they can help you outline that, I feel like that helps the process of connecting the consequence with the action. And then they aren't mad at you and acting like life isn't fair because they're the ones who came up with the consequence. I don't know. Is that helpful? So a lot of it is they just don't know how to verbalize what's going through mind. But going back to like just like also making sure the environment isn't what's making him upset, because it could just be that there's a sound or a light, or that he's stressed about schoolwork, or that he just a lot of it is just, I felt like I was failing at everything all the time, because a lot of it was, "Don't do this, don't do that, did you do this, did you do that, like why would you do that?" Like, and it was just, it's hard to hear the good when you have all that. And I don't think my parents realized how, like, I wasn't the kind of kid that needed a spanking. Like if you just like look at me, like, you know, that mom look where they like clench their jaw and they're like that was enough to like put me in like a puddle on the floor. So I think just like learning, like, you know, your kid's sensitivities really helps too. So people are starting to hop off, but that's okay. Like if you guys are good, you can hop off. I'm not going to be offended. Okay, did I miss any of the comments? Yeah, so you have two, you and your husband have ADHD. Yes, the negativity is like everything was, this always happens to me, because that's what I use. I mean, still, I do a lot of personal development. I listen to it, I read it. I'm always trying to improve something, because otherwise, like, every day would be a crappy day. And so something that my mom started doing was she asked me to keep a gratitude journal. things that, and it started with, she saw me making a list of things I wished I could do, like go to the moon, or like things I wish I could have. Just, it was like a wish list. And I filled like a notebook with this wish list because hyper focus. And so she said, well, can you make me a list of things that you're grateful for or blessings that you have? And I was like really excited about it. So she used something I was already obsessed with, my list, and she showed interest in it. And then she would praise me for it. And that helped me to really, like, so she took something that I was passionate about, something I struggled with, and she meshed them together. Does that make sense? So if you can, think of a way to, something that they're interested in, whether it's, Minecraft or some sort of animal book, or just even at night before bed saying like, here's 3 things that I liked that you did today. That type of thing, those like constant words of affirmation, and then, or you just sharing what you're grateful for at dinner. Those types of things can really help them work through those thoughts. And as they say them out loud, then they're going to make the connection. So, oh, thanks. Yeah, I overanalyze things. No consequences, everything. Punish or scold him. I'm just mean. Yeah, sometimes the cause and effect can be hard, and because they feel like it's everyone else's fault. Everyone's out to get me. At least sometimes that's how I felt as a kid. And as far as the mean thing goes, for Austin, we explain why we do everything, because when we like lay it all out for him, he cares enough about certain things and like how he makes us feel. So for example, the other day he did I don't remember what he had done. He did something, and then like he had his consequence, and he was mad at me about it. And so then later when we talked about it, I said, do you know when you do this, it makes me feel like a bad mom? And he was like shocked. And he said, why would you ever think that you're a bad mom? You're like the best mom ever. And I was just like, well, because I'm supposed to be teaching you right from wrong, and I'm supposed to be keeping you safe. That's my job. And so when you do this, you're not safe and you're not making good choices. And it makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong. So like to like spell out everything for them sometimes can help them with the consequences thing, because they may not realize the impact they have on other people. Not necessarily like to manipulate or anything, but just like they're very sensitive a lot of the time. So if you can show how their actions impact your emotions, because a lot of times I think like I looked at my parents as if like they didn't feel the same things I was feeling. So if I can say, you hurt my feelings when you say those things to me, to my son, who's, a child, I think a lot of times they realize that we do have the same feelings that they have. And if they help come up with their own consequences, then you can say, that's the consequence that we decided on together. So that might help also with the get rid of the you're mean. Also, they say the you're mean thing because they don't know how else to verbalize the feelings they're actually feeling. You're not mean. They're just feeling all these things inside that they don't know how to express or say. And they just don't want them anymore. They don't want to feel those things anymore. Oh, no problem. Yeah. You guys can keep the questions coming if you want. But I don't want to like keep you on if you're like, okay, I want to go to bed. Yeah, so I read the Love and Logic book too. Okay, so Al said we tried the Love and Logic. My son hated that. Yeah, so he was so stubborn that like some of the scenarios they talked about in the book wouldn't have ended the way it talked about in the book. I like Love and Logic. It works for my Bennett. It doesn't work for my Austin. There's no instructions on how to raise a child. You can read books till, the end of time, and it might not help. I think it's more of just understanding how their mind works, talking to them a ton, spending quality time with them, going on dates, really learning about your kid. Because I remember just feeling so misunderstood. Like I felt like my parents didn't even know me growing up, and that I was just like kind of a number. And so if you can make them feel important, and just like really get down to what's in their head, what are they feeling, why do they do the things that they do, I think that helps tremendously. But yeah, like the love and law, just think like it just depends on the kid, because it doesn't work on all my kids, because I have 3 kids and all 3 of them are completely different. So but night, Erin. So I'll wait a little bit. Anyone who's LDS, this is like fast and testimony. You're like waiting. Anyone else gonna get up? Anyone else gonna say something? I feel like I've talked a lot because there was the chat that I was reading people's comments and questions from, but thanks. So this was the first time I've ever done anything like this. It purely was just, I felt a need and I felt inspired to do it, and I thought I'm just going to give it a shot, and I would consider it a success. So I would love to do this again. Maybe even come up with different topics, or we could have some sort of theme that we talk about, whether it's homework time or morning routines or punishment or consequences, that type of thing. I don't want this to be like where I'm just like giving you advice about parenting, because I don't know each of your children individually, and ultimately you're going to know what's best for your child. You just have to figure it out, and that's the hardest part. But if we have a support group, we can talk about stuff and troubleshoot stuff together, because there's certain things that I've learned from friends that have kids that struggle that I've used for myself. Even like talking to Camille, for example, she talked about how her son like does something with like tapping his chin, and it made me realize that I totally do that ear thing, and it was a way for me to redirect that stress and frustration and to focus by doing that thing that I've been doing since I was a little kid. So it's like those are the types of things that we can talk about and learn from each other, and troubleshoot and share victories. And so this was something that I'd really like to continue to do if other people are interested. I'm thinking like maybe once a month or maybe every other month, or we could do a Facebook group where we just post questions. Whatever you are interested in doing, just let me know, and I'd be willing to facilitate that and to host it. I have a Zoom account, so we can meet, on here if we want. So I think we have been struggling lately mostly with him saying no, and we can't really discipline him because he doesn't care. He just likes to be defiant. I think it could be good to do it again once a month in a Facebook group. Yeah, I agree. I was like the most stubborn kid in the world, and I acted like I didn't care, but I cared a lot. I cared not necessarily about like getting spanked or having things taken away, but I cared about that feeling like I was a bad kid. And I cared about that feeling of being disappointed, and I had a lot of just anger. And so just that talk time, like I talked about before, that I've done with my son has been just huge. And he wouldn't get in his car seat. He wouldn't, he would just he was destructive. He was destroying my house, and he was hurting me physically. He would scratch me or throw things at me and lashing out, and he just didn't care. We tried everything to discipline him, but he just didn't care. It wasn't until we were having that talk time and helping him work through things. It's not about finding the right discipline necessarily. It's about preventing the outburst. It's about preventing the behavior. So making sure the environment is good for them, helping them work through the emotions so that it doesn't get to that point where they need to be disciplined. If they're getting disciplined for certain things, try to prevent them from making those choices. Easier said than done. But yeah, stubbornness is totally an ADHD thing. Oh, no problem, Camille. Thanks for hopping on. Thank you, everybody, for hopping on. I always have that fear, like, what if I'm just sitting there and nobody else gets on? But this was wonderful. This was exactly what I was hoping for. Conversation and input from everybody, and just seeing like, oh, my son does that and my daughter does that. Like, I'm like, oh, that's a legitimate thing. It's not just me. So, well, I'll end it there because I don't want it to get like crazy long, or else nobody's gonna want to ever do this again. But I will reach out to you so that we can get some sort of group going. I'm thinking probably on Facebook would be the easiest thing, and I can get that set up and get people added, and then we can. This is an open invitation for everybody. You can invite friends that you know, that type of thing. I'm wanting to keep it more of, I mean, parents can have ADHD too, but I want it to be more of like, we're talking about our children. Does that make sense? Because I'm on some ADHD groups on Facebook that are specifically for like women or moms or adults. But I want to keep this one more of like support for children, for the parents of children with ADHD or ADD. So, but thank you all for coming so much. And I will be in touch with you all so that we can get this group rolling, because I think there's a need and I think it'll be great. So I will catch you all later and have a good night.